case involving Florida's Stand Your Ground law. Police say Michael Draka confronted a couple for parking in a handicapped spot in Clearwater. The driver of the car...
That was my high school sweetheart. And it hurt so bad.
For Brittany Jacobs, there are no words that will ease her pain after losing the love of her life and the father of her children outside this Florida convenience store. Her boyfriend, 28-year-old Markeis McGlockton, was shot and killed by this man, who says he fired his gun in self-defense.
What do we want? Justice! What do we want? Jail!
The shooting has lit up the streets.
The confrontation between the two men turned into a shooting.
Stand your ground, it's got to go!
Testing the Stand Your Ground law.
And poured gas on the fiery debate over controversial Stand Your Ground laws.
Justice! Now!
was around 3:30, so that's a busy time, people getting off of work.
Jacobs says she and her boyfriend needed something at the convenience store Thursday afternoon. The store's security cameras were recording it all.
I'm going with the first parking space around this time, which was a handicap parking spot. My man Markeis gets out, and my son Markeis Jr. get out, and they go in the store. I'm sitting in the car with a 3-year-old and a 4-month-old.
After about 20 minutes, she says she sees a silver Jeep pull around, and then this man, Michael Draka, steps out and walks around her car.
I'm feeling scared around this time because I don't know this man. He goes to the front of my car. He's saying that I'm parked in a handicap spot, which I'm clearly very aware of.
They start exchanging words. It gets angry.
This man is now yelling at me and telling me to move my effing car. Markeis comes out, pushes the man and telling him to get away from his girl. Markeis steps back because now Markeis is endangered.
The man he just pushed pulls a gun from his pocket, and in a flash, he pulls the trigger.
Everybody by this time is panicking.
Her boyfriend stumbles back into the store. Their 5-year-old son is watching his father die. Markeis McGlockton is pronounced dead at the hospital.
It's a memory that's always going to be with my 5-year-old. My 3 kids will be without a father.
She says what happened the next day blew her mind. The Pinellas County Sheriff's Department announced that it was not charging or arresting Michael Draka.
Under these circumstances, we cannot make an arrest.
Police say that he was standing his ground.
The law on stand your ground is clear, and the Florida legislature has spoken on this.
The law is extremely subjective. If they believe reasonably that they are in harm's way, they can use force and even deadly force to protect themselves.
Brittany Jacobs says her boyfriend was defending her.
Who, as a real man, will see another man arguing with his girl? Like, who wouldn't stand up and defend their lady?
There are reports that this isn't Draka's first time getting into an argument over a parking space.
Just to argue, just to find someone to argue with?
The owner of the convenience store says he had to call the police a month ago after Draka got into a shouting match with this man.
Out here, he said he'll shoot me, call me and stuff like that. So, I think it's a racial issue.
But police say the history doesn't matter.
So what's relevant is not whether this guy's a good guy, nice guy, or whether he's a jerk. What's relevant was he in fear of further bodily harm.
I think stand your ground laws have become controversial. If the police believe that there is probable cause that someone used the stand your ground law, they can't make an arrest.
In 2005, Florida was the first state to put stand your ground laws on the books, and since then, more than 33 states have passed similar laws. People who support them say they allow homeowners, for example, to protect themselves from robbers and other criminals.
I've just been broken into. 3 men, 2 have shot in my house.
It's what happened in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma last year.
Are they bleeding? Yes, I believe one's down, one's still talking. You need to get here now.
That's 23-year-old Zach Peters on the line, locked inside his bedroom after shooting at the 3 teenagers who broke into his home.
Okay, what did you shoot them with?
They were 15.
Okay.
All 3 of the teens died. Peters was not charged with a crime.
It is the opinion of this office that Zachary Peters acted justifiably and in accordance with his rights as an Oklahoma citizen when he used deadly force to defend his home.
Attorney Gerald Griggs says in his experience, race matters in who can use these self-defense laws. White defendants, yes. Black defendants, not so much, he says.
Do you think the law is useful?
I think in certain cases it's useful, but I think in certain cases the effect is discriminatory.
So should it be on the books?
You know, I've always been a proponent of self-defense. I believe in self-defense, but I believe that self-defense should apply in all communities regardless of race or ethnic background, sexual orientation.
He feels police shouldn't be making the call, that each shooter should initially be arrested.
A large majority of the cases against African Americans are not resolved appropriately.
But saying you were standing your ground doesn't automatically mean the shooter avoids prosecution. Just ask Curtis Reeves.
What did you do with that pistol?
I shot him.
In 2014, the 75-year-old retired police officer shot and killed 43-year-old Chad Olson during an argument at this Florida movie theater.
Why did you shoot him?
At that point, it was
his life or mine.
The two were arguing because Olson was using his cell phone during the previews of the movie. In court, Reeves said he fired in self-defense and said he felt threatened for his life because Olson was younger and taller.
He was getting ready to punch me, and I perceived that at some point, and that's when the pistol came out.
But at a pretrial hearing, the judge wasn't buying it, saying Reeves was anything but afraid. Olson's wife, Nicole, who was sitting next to him, says her husband was using the phone to reach their babysitter.
Can nobody in the world stand up in a movie theater without having to fear that they are in jeopardy of losing their life?
She was shot in the hand by the bullet that killed her husband. Reeves goes on trial for second-degree murder this February. In Pinellas County, Florida, the state attorney will now investigate the case.
Prosecutors and law enforcement officers don't like stand your ground laws. It was really clear in Florida when it was passed in 2002. Prosecutors came up and said that they felt that this took away their charging decision. And it really does that, in effect.
There's no way this man should be out free, walking around, still armed.
Brittany Jacobs knows that no court can bring back the father of her children, but she's hoping it will bring them justice.
I just want justice. I need something to be done because this is not right. Something should have been done about this a long, long time ago. It shouldn't have to happen, for a man to, pass away in front of his child.
For Nightline, I'm Steve Osinsami in Atlanta.
So at about 3:30 yesterday afternoon, the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office responded to the Circle A convenience store at 1201 Sunset Point Road in Clearwater. And what we know from the investigation is that Markeis McGlockton, who's a 28-year-old African-American male, had arrived at the store with his girlfriend, Brittany Jacobs. Brittany parked their car in a handicap spot by the store. Markeis and his son, who's 5 years old, went into the store. Another person by the name of Michael Draca, who's 47 years old, white male, arrived at the store. He lives in the area and was a frequent customer of the store. And somebody who others have said complained about people parking in the handicapped spots. And he had an issue with people who illegally parked in handicapped spots at that store. So apparently Draca gets out of his car and is checking around Jacob's car and looking for handicap decals or permits or anything that would authorize them to park where they did. When he didn't see that, he confronted Jacobs, and by all accounts is that they got into a pretty significant yelling match. And there was no physical violence, there was no threats, but it was a disturbance, and that they were yelling at each other, and he was complaining about her parking in the handicapped spot. There was another customer there at the store, and the customer went inside and told a store employee that there was a disturbance in the parking lot and that he should do something about it, which was interpreted to mean probably call the police. At that point, Markeis McGlockton was in the store and learned of the disturbance in the parking lot. And it appears that he learned that it was his girlfriend, Brittany Jacobs, who was involved in this verbal altercation with Draca. So he exits the store. And when he exits the store, and it is captured on video, and we'll show you the video here in a second, he walks out the door and walks straight toward, meaning Draca, walks straight toward McGlockton. And by all witness accounts, there was no verbalization, there were no statements that were exchanged between McGlockton and Draca. Let the video pretty much speak for itself, but I'll characterize it this way is that McGlockton approached Draca. He didn't waste any time getting to him, and then he pushed him, but it isn't just a push. He really slammed him to the ground is what it is. And he pushed him with great force. I mean, this is a violent push. This wasn't a shove. This wasn't just a tap. It was with his hands, and he slammed him to the ground. So Draca falls back, and as Draca falls back, he is on his rear end on the ground. And at that point, McGlockton is still a few feet away. McGlockton is facing Draca, and Draca is on the ground. And when Draca had been slammed to the ground, he then reaches, because he's a concealed carry permit holder, and he can lawfully carry a concealed firearm, he reaches and takes out his firearm. And at that point, McGlockton is still, again, a few feet away. He's facing Draca. Looks like he's starting to turn a little bit, maybe as we would call blading, which is kind of at an angle, but he's not turned away. He's still facing him. And at that point, Draca fires one round from the gun, and it strikes McGlockton right here in the chest. McGlockton then grabs his chest and retreats back into the store, where he collapses. EMS responded. He was taken to Morton Plant Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Draca, after he shot McGlockton, took his firearm, put it in his car, and waited for law enforcement to respond. Draca was cooperative, and during the interview, what he claimed is that he had a verbal altercation, he was approached, he was slammed to the ground, and that he was in fear. And he felt, after being slammed to the ground, that the next thing was that he was going to be further attacked by McGlockton, and that he was focused on McGlockton's lower body, really couldn't see his hands, but he felt that the next thing was that he was going to be slammed again and going to be struck again, and that he was in fear. So why don't we just, it's very short, play the video for you, and then I'll continue on. So why don't we go ahead and do that.
For video, TV purposes, how much are you showing?
I'm going to show you the whole thing. I mean, it's short. I mean, it's not even 15, probably 15, 20 seconds, maybe tops. It's short.
Up to the part where he's shot?
Oh, you're going to see it shot. You're going to see him shot.
Yeah, we can't. We don't want to show that.
Okay, well, there's no way to do it other than to, you really can't see. You can see him clutch his chest. But that's about all you can, that's about all you can see. I mean, you're not going to see the, there's no blood or anything. You guys can edit out what you want. That's the car pulling in over there. Okay, so this is a little longer version.
Sheriff, can you give me a warning right before it actually happens?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just so we can pull away.
Sure. So that's Draca approaching Jacobs. And you can see he's looking around the car. And he's looking for the handicap permit decal. Okay, so this is McGlockton coming out. So he's getting ready to push him, and then the shot's going to be fired. And right here. Okay, so that's the video. So if you count it, between the time the Draco goes to the ground and the time he shoots, it's a count of 4 seconds. It's a count of 4, no more than 5. It's a very short amount of time. And what he claims, and you can tell, it's a violent push to the ground. This isn't just a shove. I mean, he slammed him to the ground. And he said when he's on the ground, because he's in fear, that the next thing that's going to happen is he's going to be re-attacked by McGlockton, and he felt that he was at peril and that he needed to shoot to defend himself. McGlockton was still standing there. He was still in front of him. He had the ability, the capability to do again or worse what he had already done by pushing him to the ground. As I said, there's no verbalization between either McGlockton or by Draco during this. And the law on stand your ground is clear, and the Florida legislature has spoken on this. And the Florida legislature has created a standard that is a largely subjective standard. This is not an objective, what I would do, what you would do, what the public would do, what somebody else would do. This is more of a subjective standard, and the person's subjective determination of the circumstance they were in, the fear that they had, is relevant to the determination of whether they're justified in the use of force. So under these circumstances, where you have somebody that is unprovoked, slammed to the ground like that, and his statement that he believed that McGlockton was going to come back at him, and he fired in a very short amount of time, a few seconds, 4 seconds probably, somewhere in that range. That is within the bookends of stand your ground, and within the bookends of force being justified. And the immunity that people are granted under the stand your ground law is just not an immunity from being charged, not just an immunity from being convicted, but is an immunity from arrest. And I'm going to read this to you, and this is Florida Statute 776.032, and here's what it says under paragraph 2. A law enforcement agency may use standard procedures for investigating the use or threatened use of force as described in subsection 1, but the agency may not arrest the person for using or threatening to use force unless it determines there is probable cause that the force that was used or threatened was unlawful. So we're precluded from making an arrest in this type of a situation. Then it goes on to say that the court shall award a reasonable attorney's fees, court costs, compensation for loss of income, and all expenses incurred by the defendant in defense of any civil action brought by the plaintiff if the court finds that the defendant was immune from prosecution. So, 1, we have to follow the law. 2, if we don't follow the law, we're civilly liable for not following the requirements of Florida stand your ground law. Importantly, the legislature this session changed the framework for stand your ground. The framework for stand your ground used to be that the defendant had to raise stand your ground as a defense, and the defendant had the burden of proving that they were entitled to immunity under stand your ground. And the legislature changed the law, and the law now is that the state attorney has the burden of proof by clear and convincing evidence that the defendant, the shooter, is not entitled to stand your ground. Nowhere else is there anything like this in criminal law where that somebody asserts something and the burden then proves to the other person or shifts to the other person. So the law is changed dramatically because you've got a situation here where stand your ground allows for a subjective belief by the person that they are in harm's way, they're in fear. In this case, this guy was slammed to the ground. In very short order, he felt it necessary, seconds, felt it necessary to defend himself because he felt he was going to be attacked again. And in order for him not to be justified, you have to take it outside of those bookends. And we are precluded from making an arrest unless we have probable cause that the person committed a crime, and we don't have probable cause here of that. And even if we were to charge, or if the state attorney were to charge, all he has to do is say, stand your ground, and then the state attorney has the burden of proof by clear and convincing evidence at a stand your ground hearing that he is not entitled to stand your ground immunity. And that's a very heavy standard, and it puts the burden on the state. So under these circumstances is that we cannot make an arrest. We're going to refer this to the state attorney's office. The state attorney's office will review it and apply the law to the facts and make a determination as to whether something should be charged. You know, before stand your ground, a case like this probably would have a different outcome. You know, as you can see in there, there is a pause, even if it's only for a couple seconds. There is a pause between the time Draka hits the ground and he shoots. That pause gives me pause. That pause gives me some concern. And it goes back to what I said when I opened. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. But I don't get to, and we don't get to, substitute our judgment for Draka's judgment. My question is, and what I have to do is make a determination, applying the law to the facts. Is he within the framework of what the law allowed him to do? Does this law create a situation, potentially, where people shoot first and ask questions later? Well, you can have that discussion. You can have that debate. I don't make the law. We enforce the law, and I'm going to enforce it the way it's written, the way the legislature's intended for it to be applied, and others can have the debate about whether they like it or not. So this will go to the state attorney. Draka will not be charged. He will not be arrested by us because we're precluded from effecting an arrest. The state attorney will view it, and either he'll concur or not. And if he concurs, then there'll be no charge, period. If he doesn't concur, then he'll make a determination as to what to do with it. And if he feels like that he can overcome that heavy burden at a stand your ground hearing of proving by clear and convincing evidence that Draka was not entitled to use force in this circumstance, then that's the state attorney's determination to make. So, I just ask everybody to understand, and there are a whole bunch of people I know and I've already got emails about it, and people are already starting to voice concern over this, and I understand that. I don't make the law, but I will enforce the law, and I'll enforce it fairly as the legislature has directed that it be enforced. And under these circumstances, this fits within the framework that the Florida legislature has crafted for all of us to live by in the state. So, I'll take any questions that you have.
So you talked about that pause when he pushed him to the ground. There you counted 4 seconds, Sheriff, but he's not coming after him during that pause.
Doesn't matter.
Show any more aggression. Can you kind of go?
Doesn't matter, because this guy's on the ground, and you know, no matter how you slice it or dice it, that was a violent push to the ground. That was a slam to the ground. So he pushed him to the ground. He violently goes back on the ground, and he's sitting there. He takes the gun out, and what he's seeing and what he's saying in his mind is the next thing he's thinking is, this guy's going to come at me again, and he fires. And is that within the bookends of a reasonable belief by his part, on his part, under those circumstances of that time? Yeah, it's within the bookends. Now, You could say, is it on the fringe of the bookends? I don't know. I'll leave that to others to judge. But is it within the bookends? Is he legitimately, could he be in fear after that violent slam to the ground? Could he be in fear that the next thing is that this guy's coming at him again when the guy's standing right there and he's standing right there like this? Yes, he could. And, you know, could he have said, hold him at gunpoint? And you could cut that both ways. He could hold him at gunpoint and not fire. Yeah, he probably could have done that. But also, the fact that he's holding him at gunpoint could also cut towards his legitimate fear. And that, you know, the guy didn't turn around and run away real fast. And the guy didn't do anything. He said, hey, man, don't, you know, we're good or something. He didn't do any of that. So it cuts towards this guy's belief in his mind that he's going to be harmed again, and he had to shoot to defend himself. You know, and those are the facts, and that's the law.
But there were no direct words between the two men that you know of.
No. And I'm not going to get into altering the facts, because altering the facts alters the outcome. But if you were to engage in that exercise, and you were to alter the facts further to the left or further to the right, and you were to change this scenario, it could have a different outcome. And if there were an exchange of information, and if the exchange of information was Markeis McGlockton making threats to him, verbalizing and saying things that buttressed his belief that he was in harm and imminent harm, then that cuts more towards justifying the shooting. If Markeis McGlockton was saying stuff like, hey man, we're good, and, you know, forget about all this, then it cuts the other way. If you have longer time, like 8 or 10 or 15 or 20 or seconds, and McGlockton had turned away, well, then that changes the outcome. But we can't change the outcome. We cannot change the facts. The facts is that he approached him, slammed him to the ground, and within about a 4 count, he fired. And no words were exchanged. We've got to use only the facts, and the facts are clear based upon video and eyewitness accounts.
Speaking to the owner of the store, he tells us that the man who fired the shots is a nuisance there, that he's caused problems in the past with other people. Do you know, are you familiar with this person? Have you been called there to deal with problems that he started in the past?
Yeah, I'm not aware, Holly, that we have been called there to deal with him in the past. There have been some incidents in the past, and we're aware of those incidents. But what's material here is what happened at that instant. You know, we have to recognize that if Markeis McGlockton hadn't walked up to him the way he did and slammed him on the ground, we wouldn't be here having this discussion either. So what's relevant is not whether this guy's a good guy, nice guy, or whether he's a jerk, or whether he's a thorn in people's sides, and what he's done, whether it's 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago, or 3 years ago. What's relevant, and the only thing that we can look at here, is was he in fear of further bodily harm because of what Markeis McGlockton did, and was he in an ability and have the capability to carry it out? And the answer is yes. So that's what we got to look at. And I'm not saying that this guy, he might well be a thorn in people's side. He might be a jerk. He might be all of those things. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. What matters is, did McGlockton slam him to the ground? Yeah, he did. And was this guy put on his rear end? And was McGlockton standing over him and in a position to do what he thinks McGlockton was getting ready to do, which was to come at him again and harm him further? Yes. And does Florida law allow you to defend yourself and stand your ground? It does. That's what the Florida legislature has said. And so, you know, our job and our role is not to substitute our judgment for the law and what the legislature has crafted as a framework, but to enforce it equally and fairly as we're required to do. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I don't make that call.
Do you disagree with it? Would you come out and say you disagree with it?
Well, I'll say this, is that I am a firm believer in the adage that just because you can doesn't mean you should. But I'll also say this, is I'm not going to substitute my judgment for Drake's judgment sitting on that ground after having been slammed to the ground either. And you know, and from his perspective, sitting there on the ground, and within a few seconds, literally, because he took the gun out and he made a decision. So it really doesn't matter what I would have done or what anybody else would have done. You know, and would I have done something different? There's a difference between arguably too what a what a law enforcement officer would do. And this guy's not. He's just a citizen. And he felt he had to defend himself.
But Sheriff, where does the law come into play where he's running out thinking that his family is being threatened and he feels like he has to defend his family?
There was no evidence of that. And again, that's what you got to be real careful with. You can't, and I get the tendency, but you can't impute facts that don't exist. And there is no evidence, no testimony, no witness accounts that his family was in harm's way at all. It was purely verbal. Purely verbal. And by all accounts, there was not even any threats. They were just arguing back and forth about the handicap spot. And I'm guessing, but we can't unfortunately talk to Markeis because he's deceased, is what was going through his mind. He probably didn't like the fact, and I don't think it takes a giant leap to get there. He didn't like the fact the way this guy was talking to his girlfriend. But also, Markeis shouldn't have gone up and slammed him to the ground either. He should have said, look, man, knock it off. He didn't have a right. Markeis engaged in unlawful conduct himself. Markeis should not have gone up and slammed this guy to the ground. And Markeis wouldn't be dead if Markeis didn't slam this guy to the ground. So, Markeis has got skin in this game too. And the reason why it makes it justified and within the framework of stand your ground is because of what Markeis did. It's sad. It's really sad. And again, we can have a discussion about what we would have done or what the law would be or what we would have done under the law prior to stand your ground or prior to even the change that puts the burden on the state and makes it a clear and convincing evidence standard. We can have those hypothetical discussions all day long, but I don't live in a hypothetical world. I live in a world of what's the law, what are the facts, and how are we going to apply it as directed? And that's what we have to do.
But are you frustrated with, especially this change now that puts the burden of proof on the state attorney? Can you tell us if that frustrates you and your job?
It's a mixed bag, I'd say. There are times. Look, people should be able to defend themselves. They should. There are times, and I can give you, again, we can come up with situations and scenarios where I do believe that stand your ground has its place. And I think that it can be something that is properly used. So as an example, before stand your ground, if somebody's walking in the mall parking lot and somebody comes up and attacks them, is that they're required to make an effort at least, or reasonably retreat before they can use force. I don't think if somebody comes up to you in the mall parking lot and tries to rob you, that before you can use force and defend yourself, that you should be required, there should be a requirement in the law to retreat first. Then you get the other end of the spectrum, which, somebody can certainly make the case that maybe this guy could have handled this differently. But, so that's why you got a range, and you got bookends. And you're going to have things that fall toward one end of the bookend or the other that aren't squarely in the middle. And I think there's an argument this probably falls towards maybe one end of the bookend, but it doesn't take it outside the bookend. And it doesn't mean that you throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I see where there can be benefit and the right thing for people to be able to protect themselves. Look, nobody has a right to harm somebody else. Nobody has a right to commit a crime against somebody else. And no matter how you slice it, dice it, or otherwise, you got to come back to is that Markeis McGlockton wouldn't be dead unless Markeis McGlockton slammed this guy to the ground. And, don't put your hands on people. Don't slam them to the ground. And if you do, you're taking a chance that that person might be a concealed carry permit holder, and they may decide that they're in fear and they're going to defend themselves. That's not, that's the world we live in. So don't slam people to the ground. People have a right to do that, to defend themselves.
How long you may not know this question, but how long do we think the state attorney's office is going to have with this investigation?
I have no way of knowing that. I can't comment on that. it'll take us a few days to package it all up and to do all the reports and to get everything together and then submit it to them. And then the state attorney will conduct his own investigation and evaluate it. But I can tell you that it's not going to be short order. I mean, if that's what you're asking, are we talking, hours or days? Are we talking weeks or months? Well, it's not hours or days, and that'll be up to the state attorney to make that determination. But I think it'll take them some time to evaluate it. Anything else? Okay. All right. Yep.
I'm attorney Benjamin Crump, along with my wonderful co-counsel, who is a native of Pinellas County, whose family has deep origins in Pinellas County, Michelle Rayner. We have the honor of representing the family of Markeis McGlockton. Also with us is one of my law partners, Scott Carruthers, as well as Attorney Rayner's law partner, Kelly McCabe. We also have with us, and more importantly, the family and the voice of Markeis McGlockton. We have his mother, Miss Moore, and she's here dealing with this tragedy as they prepare for the funeral of Markeis McGlockton. And we have the father, Mr. Michael McGlockton, who lost his only child last Thursday in this tragedy as he protected his family. And we have Miss Brittany Jacobs, who you all saw in the video, who is the partner and the soulmate of Markeis McGlockton and the mother of his 3 children, Markeis Jr., Marley, and Marshawn, who was only 4 months old at the time of this tragedy. We are here to demand justice for the cold-blooded murder of Markeis McGlockton by the self-appointed wannabe cop, Michael Drinker. And that's what this was. Make no mistake about it. This was a cold-blooded murder that was witnessed firsthand by Brittany Jacobs and Markeis's 3 young children. Markeis Jr., who was 5 years old, Marley, his daughter, who was 3 years old, and Marshawn, his 4-month-old baby. They all saw it firsthand, and for the rest of their lives, they're going to have to deal with this unbelievable, traumatic episode of seeing their father gunned down in cold blood. And that's why we're here, united to demand justice. And this follows a long line of these alleged stand-your-ground murderers in the state of Florida. We know when we were all introduced to this stand-your-ground law with Trayvon Martin in Sanford, Florida. And then you had Corey Jones in West Palm Beach, Florida. And now you have Markeis McGlockton here in Pinellas County, Florida, where the individual is the initial aggressor, starts the confrontation, and then kills the unarmed black person and claims it's self-defense. It's still ludicrous how you can claim that you're in fear of your life, but yet you approach and start the confrontation with the individuals. And there are certainly some similarities to the Trayvon Martin tragedy. When you think about the fact that the killer and Trayvon was the initial aggressor, and the killer, and Markeis McGlockton was the initial aggressor. They started the confrontation. If they would have called the police and let the police do their job, none of us would be here. In either scenario, they could have just let the police do their job. But these wannabe cops initiated the confrontation and shot and killed in cold blood these unarmed black men. And then they both were allowed to go home and sleep in their bed that night after killing unarmed black men. We have to say no. This is not justice. We will not continue to let this epidemic of being able to confront and kill unarmed black people and then say, I was just standing my ground. It was just self-defense. So we have to speak to all the leaders here, to our NAACP leaders, Ms. White, to our governmental leaders, Mr. Sean Shaw, Senator Rouson. We have to speak to the Florida legislature, and we have to let them know clearly with a united voice that we can do better as a society. We don't have to solve all our problems by taking a gun out and shooting the person. That cannot be the solution in a moral society, in a humane society. We have to tell our Florida legislature, we understand that Florida has more gun right laws than any other state in America. But we have very little, if any, gun responsibility laws. And if you're not going to do anything to amend Stand Your Ground, well, at least for God's sake, have the courage to say we want gun responsibility laws where you can't have these wannabe cops like Michael Drinker go confront a woman with her babies in the back seat of the car and then kill the father as he tries to protect this family. At least have the audacity to say that we as a legislature are going to speak to this obvious miscarriage of justice. And I'll say that there is enough evidence to the State Attorney Bernie McCabe. There is enough evidence in this case to charge this murderer with a crime. When you look at these facts, and you look at all the facts, Brittany Jacobs was in the car with her two babies in the back seat. A 3-year-old daughter, a 4-month-old son, and a strange man comes up to her car, cursing and screaming, pointing his finger through the window, and the father comes out to try to protect his family, protect his property. He should have the right to have stand your ground. Why doesn't he get the right to have stand your ground? And then, after the killer is on the ground, he pulls the gun out. And you watch the video frame by frame. 4 seconds pass. 4 seconds pass when he takes that gun out and points it. Markeis takes 4 steps back and is turning to leave and retreat. There's a white gentleman in the video. You see he turns and runs. He is not in fear of his life. He is not in fear. It is not reasonable for him to shoot and kill a person who is retreating. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, because no doubt, Michelle, Ms. Moore, Mr. McGlockton, we have to speak truth to power. And we all know that race is a factor in this case. And just imagine if the roles were reversed and you had a black man approach a white woman sitting in the car with her 2 white toddler children in the back seat. And the white father came out to protect his family and shot this strange black man who approached their car. Does anyone doubt that he would have been arrested and taken to jail if he would not have been shot right there in the parking lot? So why is it different when there is an unarmed black person lying on the ground dead? We only want equal justice, nothing more or nothing less. At this time, you're going to hear from Attorney Rayner, and then you'll hear from Brittany, Miss Moore, and Mr. McGlockton. They are not lawyers. They did not ask to be here. It is very emotional for them. Please give them the respect that they so deserve dealing with this unbelievable tragedy. And we will take a few questions at the end of their presentation of what they want to share with you from their heart. Attorney Michelle Rayner was born here in Pinellas County. Her mother, Harriet Rayner, has been a stalwart in this county in the field of civil rights. We are very fortunate to have her, who has the knowledge of and history of Pinellas County, not only through her education, but through her DNA. I am very proud to stand here with Attorney Michelle Rayner and fight for justice for Markeis McGlockton. Ms. Rayner.
Thank you. So, as I have said so many times, you cannot provoke a fight and then hide behind stand your ground. Even the statute talks about that. Even the jury instruction talks about that. And just, I want to break it down just a little bit for you. When you even present a case like this to a jury, or if you're reading the statute, you have to have a reasonable fear that you're in imminent danger of losing your life or great bodily harm. You have to have a reasonable fear, not some subjective, but a reasonableness fear. And we've already said it. 1, 2, 3, 4. It took 4 seconds for Mr. Draka to make that decision, the conscious decision to murder Markeis McGlockton. And when you think about the imminent danger and the reasonableness that comes with it, one of the other things that you have to examine, that also the jury instruction talks about, if you're resisting someone trying to commit a murder or someone resisting committing an applicable felony. But that did not happen here. So why is Michael Draka at home? Why did the sheriff say, well, it's really a toss-up? You can look at it either way. Why is this still not being investigated? Why does it have to say, well, we'll just let the state attorney deal with it and that'll be your mess to clean up? So that's why we're asking State Attorney Bernie McCabe. We're imploring him. We're demanding that there is justice. We're demanding that there is a full and thorough investigation. And we know that there are good lawyers in there because I deal with them. Ms. McCabe deals with them. We know that they are willing to prosecute. And this case should not be any different. They're willing to prosecute most cases. There's some lawyer friends I see out here shaking their head because we have dealt with them. And we know and we're confident that when they get these facts, things that are coming even to our attention, when they get these facts, and I don't even think you have to have any outside facts. You could just look at the video. Yeah. You could just really look at the video. We have a thing in the law, res ipsa loquitur. The thing speaks for itself. And it's speaking for itself. And we're demanding that there is justice. We're demanding that there are charges filed against Michael Draka and that he is taken into custody, because you know who should be standing here today? Markeis McGlockton. But he's not. So his family has to speak for him today. Thank you.
And now we will hear from his father, Mr. Michael McGlockton, who lost his only child in this tragedy. Mr. McGlockton. We are all here today because we're here for justice. We're here for justice. It was uncalled for murder. My son didn't deserve to die like this, period. As a man, when you have a son, first thing you do, you raise them up to be a man. First thing you want to do is to make sure that they're able to take care of their family when they grow up and become a man. You raise them to be men just so they can be the protectors of their own families. Unfortunately, that's all my son was doing, protecting his family. Any man out there would have did the exact same thing. Amen. If you push a man down to the ground, that man does not deserve to be shot. Stand up and fight with your fist. You don't shoot a man because a man pushes you to the ground. Again, just like the attorney said, look at the tape. Markeis was taking 2 to 3 steps back when that guy pulled that gun out. Mr. Draker, I don't even want to call him Mr. Draker, pulled his gun out. As you can see, when he pulled that gun out, Markeis was taking a couple steps back. Mr. Draker had full control of the situation right then and there. He had 4 seconds to think about it. He did not have to pull that trigger. Again, we are here because we want justice. Justice for Markeis McGlockton. Thank you. And now we will hear from his mother, if she's up to it, Miss Monica Moore.
She's not.
Okay.
It's been a rough day.
She's still having to deal with preparing for the funeral to bury her child. Our last person we will hear from is Miss Brittany Jacobs, the mother of Markeis's 3 children and his partner since she was a high school student.
Wow. I'm still in shock how this white man, this stranger, came up to my car and harassed me and my babies, came cussing at me, came pointing his finger at me, and now I'm left, I'm left answering questions for my babies, and they ask me, where's their daddy? And I need answers, because it's hard for me to even, say where where the father is right now. And we need justice.
Ladies and gentlemen, as Attorney Rayner said, this matter needs to be investigated fully. Also, the history of this wannabe cop, that he had a racist history of confronting black people at that store. So you have the video, you have the owner's testimony, and you have witnesses who were there. And thanks to Attorney Rayner's office, we have talked to those witnesses, and those witnesses tell a story that will complete this picture, that this was not stand your ground, that this was a cold-blooded murder. And the murderer got to sleep in his bed that night very peacefully and calmly, while Brittany Jacobs, Monica Moore, Michael McGlockton, and all of the family and friends of Markeis McGlockton have been completely devastated at this young man who was doing the right things, was being a responsible father, was raising his children, doing the things we want from young people in our society. And like his father said, simply because he tried to protect this family, he was gunned down, and in the most heartbreaking way, his children, especially 5-year-old Markeis, who, when you watch the end of that video, reaches out for his father, and his father falls at his feet dead. And that's what Brittany is having to explain to her children. What happened? Why did the bad man shoot daddy? And that's what we're dealing with. And so we have to give her the answers, not only for her and the family, but for all of society, and help heal this community that is grieving this unimaginable loss. At this time, we will take some of your questions.
What action do you plan to take for this stand your ground law? Do you plan to go to the state attorney's office, make any kind of demand? What action do you plan to take here?
Certainly. Senator Darrell Roussine, who's a local senator from this community, has already reached out. Mr. Sean Shaw is here with us, who's a candidate for Attorney General, as well as Ms. McWhite, the NAACP leadership. We plan on asking the legislature to consider the amendments to Stand Your Ground, that if you are the aggressor, and it can be clearly shown that you are the aggressor, you should not get the benefit and the immunity of Stand Your Ground. You can't start a confrontation and kill somebody and say, oh, I was just standing my ground. Why did you start the confrontation in the first place? Why did this wannabe cop feel he could take the law into his own hands? And secondly, and I think more important, is the fact that we have to have gun responsibility laws. Right. We have all these gun rights laws. We have to have gun responsibility laws. Attorney Rayner and I, Attorney Scott Carruthers and I are going to engage more-minded society thinking legislators to say, let's do right. Let's try to protect the citizens of the state of Florida from this shoot first, ask questions later mentality.
Mr. Crump, we know that the burden of proof now shifted as a result of the change in the law from the defense proving Stand Your Ground to the prosecutors having to prove it. Does that provide a different barrier and a difficulty in proving this case if it moves through the court system?
I'm going to let Attorney Rayner answer that question, but I want you to know it's very clear. There's enough evidence here just by the video. Unfortunately, with Trayvon Martin, we didn't have video. In this case, there is video that clearly shows Mr. McGlockton was retreating. He was walking back. But Attorney Rayner does criminal defense work, and she's dealt with Stand Your Ground in her cases on many occasions. And I want her to answer your question and speak to normally how she has to deal with Stand Your Ground when she's representing black people.
So when you assert Stand Your Ground as a defense counsel, you're asserting you have to make a prima facie case. It's one of the lowest barriers, one of the lowest burdens that we have. And then what happens is that the burden does shift to the state attorney or the prosecutor to, by clear and convincing evidence, to show that it was not a Stand Your Ground matter. And when the state attorney is able to do that, they're able to take propensity, they're able to take character evidence, they're able to take witness testimony. And I think in this case, even if, and we believe that Mr. McCabe is going to file charges. So when charges are filed and Mr. Draco hires counsel or counsel is appointed to him and Stand Your Ground defense is asserted, which we believe he will assert, the state attorney has more than enough in their arsenal to defeat a Stand Your Ground motion and a Stand Your Ground a defense.
Say about, hold just one second. One of the things Michelle shared with me that I thought was riveting, because you cannot neglect the fact that Stand Your Ground is being applied in a racist, calculated manner in many instances. When her clients choose to assert Stand Your Ground, unfortunately, these black people have already been arrested. They're in jail telling their counsel, I was standing my ground. But unfortunately, when it's a black person who's shot, normally the cops let them go home from the scene of the crime. We have to speak to that. We have to say that this inequity and justice is not constitutional. It's not right for the police to arbitrarily say whatever the white person said who killed the black person, we're going to take that as factual. But when a black person says that at the scene, they're still arrested, charged, and taken to jail. So we have to use this as a teachable moment and make sure the legacy of Markeis McGlockton is something that his children can know their father did not die in vain.
That's right. And the other question I was going to ask to that point, and maybe Michelle or you
Yes, sir.
can speak to this, there is a new barrier in the law, whereas if the police arrest somebody, or in this case the sheriff's department arrests somebody, they can be held civilly liable if the prosecutor determines or the state attorney determines that it's not standard ground. Do you think that that's part of a reticence as to why Mr. Draker has not been arrested?
I'll let co-counsel Attorney McCabe speak to that. We have a team effort. Ms. McCabe?
I think that's definitely one of the barriers. I think that, but that barrier has always been there with stand your ground. So I think the added on barrier, that the shift in burden, is what's truly causing, I guess, them to hesitate in arresting somebody who is asserting stand your ground. They've always had this, you know, open to litigation if somebody prevails in a stand your ground case. But now that it has shifted where the state attorney has the burden of proving that it's not a stand your ground case, I think those two coupled together is what's giving them hesitation in arresting someone, or arresting in this case, I should say. But this is not a stand your ground case. The person who had stand your ground was our client, Markeis McGlockton.
In your experience, what type of timeline could we expect for a decision from the state attorney's office? I know obviously you don't speak for them, but just in dealing with them in the past, how quickly would you expect a decision?
It could be any time. I mean, you know,
it could be tomorrow.
It could be tomorrow. It could be 2 months from now. It could be 6 months from now. However, with dealing with this office, normally, we could expect, if they've given all the evidence and given all the reports, and you know they start their investigation, it can be pretty quickly. However, I do believe that they are very careful, as in a lot of my cases, they will build their case, and I believe, especially in this case, I'm confident that they're going to build a case against Michael Draco.
Yeah, I want to make sure you talk to the mic. I will say this here, and we'll take one or two more questions. All we want is State Attorney Bernie McCabe's office to do to the shooter of Markeis McGlockton what he would do if the roles were reversed. We want nothing more or nothing less. Simple justice is all this family seeks. Nothing more, nothing less. Two more questions and then.
Funeral arrangements been made?
Yes, ma'am. Miss Monica and Mr. Michael McGlockton have the funeral set for Saturday morning at 11 a.m.
at Shiloh Baptist Missionary Church in Largo.
And please know that they are completely heartbroken over the loss of their child. And so try to be respectful to them at the homegoing services. Yes, ma'am.
As a biracial, I have a question. Do you think that when that man walked up to your car, that his motive was to kill somebody?
What we say to you, ma'am, and we appreciate you being here because you represent the future. Look at his history. Listen to what the owner said, that this man had a propensity to confront African Americans at that store, and that he had trouble with him in the past. And we would hope that the state attorney and the law enforcement officers who are investigating this matter will look into those measures as well at his history. We thank you for being here today. There will be the homegoing services, and I know the community is planning many other events to stand up for justice for Markeis McGlockton, and people from the community will get an opportunity to speak at those events. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
There'll be a pool camera allowed.
You'll get those. We'll release those details.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.